Welcome to the Pewtercast. Today is Tuesday, October 10th, 2017, and this is episode 47, The Offensive Defense, question mark? I am Brent Allen, your host, and with me, as always, listen, to be fair, he's not actually with me, like here in the same room. He's kind of out there in Skype land somewhere, but Rendaxed, how's it going, my friend?
It's going well. I am at the home base I was going to give my address. I decided that was a terrible idea. I'm at the Skype Sphere in the Berg, St. Petersburg, Florida.
There you go.
It's going good.
There you go. And I am all the way up into Jacksonville, Florida. But at least I'm in Florida, Ren. At least I'm in Florida, driving distance of Tampa. Which makes
closer.
Yeah. So, hey, you and I spent a little bit of time trying to figure out the title of this episode, and where we came to was the offensive defense, or how do we say it? Because it's spelled the exact same way. Is it the offensive defense or the offensive defense?
Well, I think that's why it's such a good title this week. You know, the listeners will have to go through the podcast and listen, and you will fall on one side or the other after you've heard all the arguments.
Yeah, is the defense, are they stinking it up and they're offensive, or is the defense really kind of going on the offense in a lot of questions? So, yeah, we're going to tackle that and a little bit more tonight. But, Ren, why don't we get into it? We've got a great show planned for the folks. So let's go ahead. We're going to open the main segment, Ren, with you making good on a promise that you made during our Instant Cast show. And then in the second half of that, we're going to be joined by our guest, a good friend of the show here, to discuss kind of some bye-week adjustments and really get into talking a lot about the defense as well. And then to close out the show, we're going to get into your questions, your comments, and your emails in our fan interaction segment. Guys, all of that is coming your way and more right here on the Pewtercast. You're listening to episode 47, the offensive defense, or offensive defense, however we say it. This is the part of the show where normally we kind of take a deep dive into the most recent game that the Bucs have played. In this case, it would be the Patriots, where the Bucs took their first home defeat in the last 7 games that they've played in Raymond James Stadium.
Is it defeat or defeat?
That would be the question.
Maybe we'll switch the name of the podcast to that.
Let's just, every verb, we're just going to question where the what do you call that? The emphasis or the emphasis goes on the word.
On the syllable?
You're putting the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable. And it actually seems like maybe this last Thursday the Bucs did put the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable because, as we just mentioned, they came out with a loss. Definitely not the way we wanted the game to go. But we do say they stayed in it till the end, which made it an interesting game. At this point in the week, Ren, we've already done the Instant Cast show where we get to talk about the game with kind of that fresh and raw reactions and feelings. And this is the part of the show, this is the part of the podcast where we're kind of supposed to do a little more analytical part where we go through position groups and talk about how each one did, and then we wrap up with grades. We give them to each unit, and we talk about the team as a whole. And, Ren, I got to tell you, I sat down and I started watching the All-22, trying to prep for the show tonight, and I found myself I didn't want to do it tonight, man. I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to talk about this game anymore. At this point, we're 5-6 days after the game. I'm done with it. I don't care anymore. I don't really want to talk about the game. And honestly, we've already done it. We talked about it during the Instant Cast and the 22 other Buccaneer podcasts out there. that have been talking about it. I've had my fill of it, and I'm pretty sure that most of our listeners, most of our fellow Buccaneer fans have had their fill too. We're just kind of ready to move on. So let's change up today's topic. What do you say, Ren?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Now, listen, on the Instant Cast, though, before we really get into kind of where we're switching some stuff up, Ren, you had promised that we were going to have a conversation about Vernon Hargreaves III. That was kind of a topic some people wanted us to get to. We just didn't get to it at the Instant Cast. So
right.
I want to encourage everybody, if you've not listened to the Instant Cast, go back and do that. It's just one episode back in the podcast feed where we talk all about the game and the various different aspects of who did what great and who didn't, and kind of bringing some clarity to all of that. But we didn't really get to dive into the whole Vernon Hargreaves III and what the deal's going on with him. So, Ren, let's go ahead and get into that. And then if there's anything else lingering that you really might want to touch on, we can do that as well. And then we're just going to jump straight to grades, and we'll move on. What do you say to that, Ren?
Yeah, I like it. Especially like you said, it's been 5 days since the game. The analysis of who's to blame and who did great, and, what needs to improve has been done to death already. So, I think this is going to be a nice diversion for the listeners, and I'm looking forward to it. Beautiful.
Well, let's go ahead. Vernon Hargreaves III, there's some different people who have different takes on, he's fine, he's just in his second year, it's the scheme. Other people are just saying, no, he's playing soft, he's playing scared, he's just not up to snuff, he's a bust of a draft pick. Vernon Hargreaves III, what do you make of him, Ren?
I guess the $1 million question is, is it scheme or is it the player? We heard it all through training camp about the Buccaneers coaches, especially defensive coaches, obviously, want him to play a little more aggressive. To me, that means, not giving such a big cushion, not letting everything develop behind you. Take some more chances, jump some more routes, play a little more bump coverage, press man, things of that nature.
And it certainly seemed like he was doing that through the preseason, didn't it? I mean, we talked about that.
Yeah,
they want to play him a little more aggressive. It looks like he's playing more aggressive.
Yeah, he was playing more aggressive. Agreed. The whole problem is it's still such a mystery is because Quan Alexander has played one series the whole entire season. He got that interception against Mike Glennon, and then he hasn't been on the field since. So you don't know if Mike Smith, especially after Levante David went down the Minnesota game, and now we started Kendall Beckwith and Adarius with Glanton, who have done very good jobs as far as filling in, but they lack in pass coverage. That's they're not nearly as good as Levante David and Quan Alexander are. So is it the scheme where Mike Smith doesn't want, Grimes and Hargreaves up against their because if you're playing press man or bump coverage, within the first 5 yards, the corner's back will be facing the quarterback. So then you don't know what's going on behind you. You can't tell if it's a run or a pass. You can only, once you got to get your head around once you get into a comfortable spot with your receiver. So is it that Mike Smith is telling these guys to play off so they can, keep their eyes in the backfield a little longer to be able to help out the Beckwiths and the Glantons in pass coverage, or even, in run support as far as setting the edge? Or is it that they keep telling him you need to be more aggressive, and he just is refusing? I've heard things with national pundits say he's playing scared. You heard Tony Romo, if you watched the telecast Thursday night, said he was playing too soft at least twice. Almost befuddled, he's like, you just got to play tighter. You just got to play tighter. So it's still $1 million question. He had the Chicago game. He had a good game. The Minnesota game, it was probably his worst game as a Buccaneer. The Giants game, he had a pretty good game. He didn't have a Brent Grimes game, but he had an okay game. He missed 1 or 2 tackles, but he had a pass breakup, and he was there a lot. And then you go against Tom Brady and how they use their 7 yards and shorter, spread offense, and they use it as sort of like an extension of the running game. it just seemed like he was just there to sort of push the guy out of bounds. He's like, okay, I'm going to let you catch it, then I'm going to tackle you. And as the Patriots are going up and down the field, not scoring touchdowns and kicking field goals, it seemed that, Vernon was the guy they were going after and having a lot of success. And that's what started this conversation about, is he a bust? Is he worth it? And then people jump in and, they talk about Xavier Rhodes, who, he's the new shutdown corner for the Minnesota Vikings, had a pretty good game against us when we went up there. And, they bring, Xavier Rhodes was terrible for like the first 2-3 years or 2.5 years or something, and it's going to click. So, honestly, the jury's still out.
And, I remember, on that line, I also remember watching some of the, sideline clips from the Giants game, and Eli Manning said, hey, we're throwing at number 28 all day. Throwing at number 28 all day. Right. Even Eli Manning sitting there just saying, he's horrible, he's the weak side of the line, we're just going to throw at him all day long. So, none of that helps his case by any stretch of the imagination.
No, it doesn't. But then, if you're a pundit for Hargraves, you just point, well, you're not going to throw at Brent Grimes, so yeah, you're going to throw it at Vernon Hargraves. I think we're not really going to be able to tell how Vernon Hargraves is going to play this year until Levante and Quan come back. Until they get in there and they can, sort of run their defense at full speed, we'll be able to see Vernon be more aggressive. Because I'm sort of in the thinking, they haven't lied to us. For the 3 years that Cutter's been here, I've yet to catch him. Not that I'm trying to, but hear him say something to the press, and that's what I mean by us fans, because we hear it through the press or the press conferences or, on Twitter. Not that, quotes from him on Twitter. Or Mike Smith. They're not guys that lie to you. They don't bullcrap you. They don't pee on your head just, and try to tell you it's raining. So when they say things like, we want Vernon to be more aggressive, and you don't see it, I think they're protecting something else. At least Mike Smith is. That's my thinking. So, once again, I don't think they want Vernon's back to the quarterback right now because of inexperience at linebacker. Right now, they're happy with sort of keeping everything 7 yards and closer. You give them this 10-yard cushion, and once they hit 8 yards, that's when you start sort of shrink the gap or close up the gap. So the jury's still out. I don't think he's a bust. I've gone on record that he may never turn into Brent Grimes. He may be just a guy that's always a number 2 corner. But number 2 corners are also they're not as rare as obviously number 1 shutdown corners. But if he plays for the Buccaneers for 10 years as a number 2 corner, it's still not a bad draft pick. He just didn't turn out to be the cover corner that you wanted him to be. So, to kind of wrap this up is, yes, you still need to be patient. Yes, I understand that it's frustrating. I am ready for Vernon to have one of these Brent Grimes type games. But as of now, his leash with me, before I start, really scratching my head and going, I don't know about this guy, I'm going to have to wait till Levante and Quan are back, and then I'm going to take the next 2 game sample.
You're probably going to have to wait more than 1 game, too, with having them back as well, because those guys are going to have to kind of get back into it as well, right?
And it depends on who you're playing. If you're if it happens to be the week he's going up against Drew Brees and Matt, the 2 games Drew Brees and Matt Ryan are the back-to-back quarterbacks, I'd rather have, see him against Tyrod Taylor and Josh McCown. You know what I'm saying? So, but that's where I as of now, because I don't know when they're coming back, and I'm talking about the linebackers, I'm going to give it a 2 game sample before I sort of address this again. I want him to play better. I wish he'd break out. I want him to be more aggressive, but I'm not in the defensive, back meeting room, and I'm not in the meeting room when they all get together with Mike Smith and they put together their game plan. I'm not there for the walkthrough, so I can't tell you that they're telling him to press and he's not, and I can't tell you that they're not telling him to press and he's doing what he's supposed to. I can only go by from what I've heard from I can only trust the coaches right now and trust Vernon is doing what he's supposed to be doing.
Fair enough. I actually agree with you. I think it makes all the sense in the world, the idea that Mike Smith is changing his scheme to fit the players that he's got. And two of the players he doesn't have is Quan and Levante, and that changes how things work. And so, we can say that Vernon's scared. I think he's just playing the way he's being told to play right now. I think. I don't know. None of us are on headset. But, that to me, it just seems to make the most sense rather than just saying that Vernon is playing scared. I find it hard to believe that any player at this level is scared when they go out there,
Yeah, scared to the point where they refuse to do what they're told.
Yeah, and if
do what, because that's going to get you benched just as fast as getting burnt, and press man coverage. So
yeah, because if Vernon is not doing what he's being told to do, he's not going to still be out there.
Right.
They're gonna find somebody else. So, I just don't buy that he is playing scared and he's playing 10 yards off without the check mark from Mike Smith saying yes, that's what he should be doing right now. That's just my assessment of it. And as you say, we won't really know what he's capable of until those changes come back. And maybe that would be a really great question for some of the press corps to ask Mike Smith is, hey, are you telling Vernon to play this way, or is he just not engaging the way he needs to?
Yeah. Is that the scheme you're running?
Yeah.
Especially versus New England, because that seemed to sort of rear its ugly head again. The Minnesota game, we said many times, we're just throwing that out. I have no idea what happened offensively or defensively.
It was something in the water around the entire league. So with that, Ren, we're going to kind of bypass really the rest of the game. Let's just go ahead and get to grades, because we always do grades based on the game. So what grade would you give the offense, the defense, special teams, and then the team as a whole for the Patriots game specifically?
I just talked a whole bunch. How about you go ahead and start?
All right, no problem. For me, I'm going to give the offense a C, and it probably would be lower except for the fourth quarter, and they did hang in there. I mean, they didn't get completely shut out. They didn't get blown out. It was relatively close. Was there anything spectacular? No. To me, a C is an average, and I think that's pretty much how they played, was pretty average, except for the fourth quarter. I thought the fourth quarter was relatively special, minus a couple of drops that were key. Or missed reads. So to me, it's just a C. You're not going to win many games. They certainly didn't win this one this week with that. To me, the defense gets a B is the grade I'll give them on that. And this is that debate, Ren, that we keep talking about of what happened with the defense. Like, Tom Brady completes 10 of 10. That's crazy.
They can't 300 yards. They're always on the field.
Yeah, they can't get off the field. You flip it on the other side, though. They only scored 19 points.
Only one touchdown.
The defense kept us in the game.
And had that huge 3-and-out after the onside kick.
Right. So
like the only one of the game that I can remember.
Right, and to even start off the game with new guy Justin Evans, his interception. So so to me, I'm going to give the defense a B. Special teams. All right, I got to do something special with special teams. It is completely unfair to me to lump Nick Folk and Brian Anger together in the same category, because that's really the only two guys that we're grading in special teams. So for me,
kickoff return.
But let's face it, all of that really is going to hinge on Folk and Anger. So I'm going to give Brian Anger an A. And I tweeted this during the game. I said, I hope Bucs fans are not underestimating just how much Brian Anger is helping us stay in the game, where he kept pinning the Patriots so far deep into the end zone. Like, that was a gift to our defense.
Yeah.
Was to help.
They couldn't hold them down there. It only took like 3 plays. They're out at the 25. But
right. But imagine if they'd started at the 25 and went from there.
Yeah. I had to start at the 6.
Right. So to me, Brian Anger, as always, Special Teams Player of the Year from last year, probably will be again this year if I have to look forward. He gets an A. Nick Folk gets an F, and this F is for fired, because that's exactly what happened. I'm sorry, he got put on injured reserve.
Right.
Quote
Air
unquote.
quotes.
Yeah. By the way, I got a big kick out of my tweet based on that of, big surprise. They send Nick Folk to IR, and it's Dr. Evil doing the air quotes to injured reserve.
IR.
Yeah, IR. Yeah. We're gonna send it. He's injured. Yeah. So I for the team as a whole, to me that gives them a C plus. If I look at it, a C, a B, an A/F. I'm gonna give them a C plus. It was a valiant effort. Wasn't enough, and so it was average. Maybe slightly above average, but it was just average to me. How about you?
All right. I did get a little clarity on that injured reserve thing. They're not really trying to hide him. Apparently, you can't cut a player if he's injured.
Interesting.
So, yeah. So, I also did a tweet. It didn't get nearly all the responses yours did, but it was like, Jason Light's like, Nick, you're fired. And Nick goes, oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. My
plantar fasciitis is acting up.
My plant leg knee has been hurting.
Yeah.
Jason Light, light bulb, and then, Nick Folk twirls mustache.
I saw that tweet. I didn't understand what you meant by it. Now I get it. That's funny.
Yeah. It's like, you're fired. Wait, my leg hurts. And then Jason's like, aha, I'll put you on IR. And Nick Folk's like, I'm the peculiar purple pie man from Porcupine Peak, whatever. But apparently, if someone's injured, you can't cut them. So basically, he's just going to stay on IR until he is healed, whenever that is, and then they can cut him. There's no secret stash him there just in case Murray falls to pieces. There's none of that stuff going on.
Right, and he's not going to do an injury settlement. He's not going to forego. I would imagine that foregoes his salary if he does an injury settlement. I don't even know if he can do one. I don't know how all that works, but okay. Well, that's interesting about Nick Folk going to IR because his knee hurts, which he's getting old. I guess that could happen.
I guess, yeah. Who knows? And also, I think it's a clever play for getting picked up for another team later.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, geez, you missed 5 of your last 7. Well,
I was on
tendonitis in my plant leg.
Yeah.
So anyway, as the saga unfolds with Buck kickers, I'm so upset we still have to talk about kickers.
I know.
Anyway, offense, I gave them a D+. They really didn't have any problem. It's nothing New England did. New England really didn't stop them. They stopped themselves with drops, misfired passes by Jameis on third down, overthrows, drop touchdowns, missed field goals. So offensively, I don't think they were outmatched. They just didn't execute. And for as poorly as they executed, and even, they couldn't even get on the right page for that last play, and in case any listeners have not seen the interview, which was the day after the game, someone asked Dirk Cutter about it, and he's like, no, Jameis, that was a perfect pass. That was a great read. He kept saying the other guy, missed it. The other guy did it wrong until finally someone said, the other guy's O.J. Howard. Derek Cutter's, yeah, it was O.J. Howard. So everybody knows that. That's who he threw it to. But, and we discussed that a little bit on the Instacast. So I'm giving them a D+ because it's not necessarily anything New England did. Their scheme really didn't stop them. It was just poor execution. Defense, I'm giving a B-, kind of like everything we've talked about. They did sack Brady. They got more pressure on Brady. They got a pick on Brady. Never, hasn't been picked all year. But, they couldn't get off field in third down, anytime they needed a third down completion, Brady made it. It was really frustrating. 2 or 3 times like it'd be a sack or a penalty on their left tackle who had a pretty bad game. I think he got called for 2 at least that I remember. So okay, so now it's like 2nd and 20 or 2nd and 17 or, 1st and 20 or 1st 17, and Brady drops back and throws like an 18-yard pass. And it's like, okay, 1st down or it's 2nd and 2. It's just every time they got, 1st and long, he just, I'll just throw 15 yards. And it was just right back where they were. So defense gets a B-. The only reason it's a B- is because they kept those field goals 2 field goals and not touchdowns. And then special teams, I'm doing something special myself. I'm giving them a 0.
Incomplete.
It's a team game.
Okay.
I'm not going to separate, Brian Anger from Nick Folk. Just like I don't separate Cam Brate from Deshaun Jackson and Mike Evans. I don't separate Jameis Winston when I'm grading the offense from Doug Martin or the offensive line. It's a team. Those guys are a team. And I'm giving them a 0 because it was abysmal.
Mm-hmm.
Anger did his job. Okay. He always does his job. Maybe, that's me just expecting it. Fine. I don't care. But one missed field goal, the 56-yarder I give you. The 48, I'm kind of like, The 31 is unforgivable. And then stack that on about last week. It was so bad you lost your job. So, yes, you are getting – special teams is getting a 0. And overall, I'm giving them a C-. It should be a D. But, once again, since they only give up 19 points, that bumps it up. That bumps up a little bit. I think a D's a little too harsh, even a D+. I thought the offense, like I said, the offense moved the ball, but the defense couldn't get off the field. The offense really couldn't stay on the field. It was either, they drove down the field and something happened, or they were 3 and out. So overall, it's a C double. I'm gonna go minus, not a D minus, not a D plus, but a C minus.
C minus. That sounds like some sort of IT certification designation.
Yes, it's good.
Coming off.
Yes.
That. All right, folks. Well, I tell you what. That's going to really wrap up our talk on the game. So I'll go ahead and throw this out now. Normally we do this later. This is where we'd say we'd like to know your thoughts on our thoughts. You can do that by shooting us an email to thepewtercast@gmail.com. Find us on the Twitter sphere @thepewtercast or on facebook.com/thepewtercast. We do respond to all forms of feedback, and that's one of the more fun aspects of being part of this Bucs fan community. Now, I did mention that we had something fun planned for our listeners, and kind of knowing, Ren, that we would have this gap to fill in with kind of how we're changing things up this week, I was trying to think of, what can we add to the conversation that is being talked about out there in the 22 different Buccaneer podcasts that's out there and all the different sites and things like that. And, there's other people who are doing previews of the upcoming game. Other people are actually still talking about the new kicker with Pat Murray and about Jameis and things like that. So I wanted to branch out of that. And as I was thinking about it, it kind of hit me. This is our mini bye week, right? And we don't really get a full bye week thanks to Hurricane Irma. So this is really the best thing we've got for this year. And it was last year during the bye week I was thinking about. That's when the Bucs went away. They made some changes. They made some adjustments. They came back and they wound up going on a 5-game winning streak, finished out the second half of the year 6-2. We wound up going 9-7 on the whole year, barely missing it out of the playoffs. So I wanted us to kind of tackle that question of during this bye week, what adjustments do the Buccaneers need to make? And to help us with that, Ren, we've actually got a special guest. He's a guy who is back with us. He's from thepewterreport.com. You guys may know him as Tampa Bay Trey on Twitter. You may know him as the Man Bun. I know him as a guy who let me get lost and wander the halls of One Buck Place. Trevor Sikkema, welcome back to the show, my friend.
Hey, you guys said at the beginning there that this is fun. I hope people don't think I'm going to be fun. I mean, that's not my brand at all. So, but it's good to be back, guys.
Okay, Trevor, treat.
Hey, you have to make it festive. Like throughout the month of October, your Twitter name has to be something like Halloween related. That's just I don't make the rules of Twitter, man. This is just, I just got to follow them. So Trev or Treat is my Twitter name right now if you search it.
So can I make a confession? I just now realized that Trev or Treat is your name, Trevor.
Oh, there we go.
I just put that together like right now.
Makes it even better, doesn't
it? Trevor, man, how are things going on over there in Pewter Report world?
It's good. I mean, just recovering from the internet comment section meltdown that was the Patriots game. The Buccaneers probably should have won. So, But other than that, it's good. It's going good.
Great. Well, Trevor, I wanted to get you in on this conversation because I personally have really come to respect your football IQ. Your Cover 3 article, the weekly article there, it's fantastic. You routinely put Uncle Stan's soul at ease by actually talking about Bucs football on your own podcast and kind of sort of forcing Mark and Scott to sort of kind of do the same. So, as we mentioned, the Bucs have this time off. They're back to work, today, I think, as people are listening to this.
They did a walkthrough. They did a walkthrough today, which is Tuesday. So.
Right. And Wednesday is practice, or they can do full pads practice on Wednesday. Is that it? So Bucs are back at it now. It seems that all of Bucs Nation has been all that we've been talking about this week is that this person needs to step up here, that person needs to step up there, that play needs to get better, this call needs to be a different call to get this whole thing on track. We're kind of doing okay, but we could be doing so much better. So in your opinion, man, I'll kind of throw it to you first. What are some of the actual adjustments that the Bucs should be looking at doing during this extended time off this week to maybe get on another winning streak and maybe even propel them into the playoffs for the rest of the season?
Well, I mean, there's definitely things that they can do on both sides of the ball, adjustment-wise, that you can make. And I actually think the defense, even though everybody talks about the offensive deficiencies and how the offense is farther away from their ceiling of potential than, say, the defense is, I think defense is the bigger one because, in the offense, you look in I might get into this a little bit deeper, but there are things in the offense, not like schematically and play calling wise, that could be better, but most of it is kind of just Jameis Winston. Like, he just has to hit it stuff. Like, that's kind of the offensive things that need to happen. But for the defense, man, I know their points per game I think it's in the top half of the league now that they only held the Patriots to 16 points. But in terms of, like, pass defense and yards given up, third downs converted on them, yards per carry, like, they're still not good. They're pretty close to the bottom of the league in a lot of those categories, especially sacks and takeaways too. And that's actually where we're gonna end up when I talk about the adjustments. And it has to get more aggressive somewhere. It has to. And you remember last year when this team went on this run, a big reason for that is because you had players like Keith Tandy and a couple of the other guys just making splash plays here and there that ended up turning into these turnovers. These drive-ending plays. Sometimes they came in the form of, like a tackle for loss or a sack, and other times they came in the form of like an interception, something like that. The Bucs don't have a lot of that this year. They don't have many takeaways at all. I think they're in the bottom half of the league. I think the couple of interceptions there here at the end have kind of saved them from being just at the bottom of the barrel. But you have to find a way to put yourself in better position to make those things happen, or at least, like break up a drive or something, because the Bucs, what they will do is, the way they have their defense set up right now is that it is so lax. They play so off this truly bend but don't break style where they're not going to let you get these huge touchdowns on them. But as a result, you can basically get all the yards you want. And it's not until the offense gets into the opponent's 30-yard line or 20-yard line, like the Bucs 30 for the defense with their backs against the end zone. It's not until they get to the red zone or near that red zone area that they can use the space of, say, the back of the touchdown area as like another defender, an extra defender, and that's when you really see them kind of start to clamp down, and they can hold teams to field goals. At some point, it's got to get better because the great ones are going to carve you. The great offenses are just going to carve you up, and eventually they are going to start converting in that red zone. And teams really haven't yet, and it hasn't made them pay, so they have to get aggressive somewhere. I think in the secondary is the biggest part, but it's kind of a give and take with the pass rush, because though they got up a couple sacks, it's just not where it needs to be. And we talk about this team having playoff aspirations. Like, you can't play this soft of defense against playoff caliber teams. So you'll lose. You're just going to give up too many yards, and you're going to put opposing offenses in too good of situations too often. It's like you're daring them to score, and the great offenses in the league are going to they're going to score. So you want to try and limit that as much as you can. And I just think to me, the defensive side of the ball and how they set up their defense is the biggest adjustment for me, because it has to get more aggressive somewhere, because the sacks, the turnovers, something has to come. They have to clamp down somewhere.
Yeah, it seems like the Bucs do great, in the first quarter of getting 3 and outs, and then you feel like you don't see one for the rest of the game.
Sure.
And that really is starting to put pressure on the offense, who does like to go 3 and out through the second and third quarters. Because, the team, I would say the opponent will just take the Patriots. They eat the clock up 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 7 minutes. Maybe they don't score. Maybe they get a field goal. But then when the offense comes back out, and if they go 3 and out, then you're putting your defense on the field for 12, 13 minutes straight.
Right.
Because they can't get these 3 and outs. And then later in the game, they just can't keep up. They start to break down. You can see people get tired. It's I'm with you. I get the bend with don't break. Something needs to change. You need a 3 and out. And are they just relying on turnovers? Is that what they're going with? Because Chicago game, they look great. You get 4 turnovers, you will look like that, or 3
sure.
and 1 on special teams. So sort of when the defense, the 3 and out disappears, from the second quarter, third quarter, and usually mostly the fourth. They got a big one against the Patriots Thursday night, but most of the fourth quarter they haven't been getting 3 and outs. Do you think they're just putting all the emphasis on they're going to make a mistake, they're going to shoot themselves in the foot with a penalty, or we'll get a turnover, and that's how we're going to flip the field or get a short out, if you will?
I think so. I mean, we've heard from Mike Smith and certain players too who just say well, we haven't gotten any turnovers, and that's kind of the thing. It's like, okay, the style of defense that you're playing basically says, hey, we're going to be patient, and then wait to pounce and try to go get a turnover, and that makes sense until you realize that a lot of turnovers in this game have a good amount of luck in them. So when when your game plan is, and don't get me wrong, every coach says you got to win the turnover battle, and I totally get that part. But when you talk about it from a defensive side, and when you realize that playing defense is about the adjustment side, right? The offense is the one that sets the tone. It's the defense that is the one that always has to react. That's how football is. The defensive side of the ball is the side of the football that reacts. And so when you think about that, and you think about how initially, because of that, the defense doesn't have a lot of control over what's going on. To take something that you could control, such as being aggressive in certain areas or forcing a certain play here and there as an adjustment, and when you realize that the Bucs aren't really doing that, they're kind of just sitting back, being patient, and thinking, well, hopefully we get a turnover before they get to the red zone, and if not, they get into the red zone, and then we can clamp down since they have less space to work with. Mm-hmm. That's kind of that's basically as soft of a bend but don't break defense as you can possibly play. And some games it'll work out, and we saw a lot of that last year when Phillip Rivers made the big threw the big interception at the end of the Chargers game, or when Cam Newton threw those 2 bombs and Keith Tandy had those 2 picks in the last year, and it just happened to be oh, look, they got a turnover off a bomb pass. I mean, if you start thinking that those things are going to happen, or basically going, well, either those things happen or shrug, that's the defense we play, that's when I get worried. Because playing defense is enough of not having control of enough things. It's a very soft way to play defense.
So is this something that is more or less? Is this just what we're waiting on Quan and Levante to come back, or is this a bigger thing to help get this kicked into gear with the defense?
Because I've been loving looking at the past couple of games this year, and obviously there's been a lot of criticism on guys like Chris Conte and Vernon Hargreaves, and you want to make sure that you give them the appropriate time and that you're looking at things the way that they need to be looked at. But I would just say that the evidence is mounting against Hargreaves.
Yeah.
That he just might not have the straight line speed to be the outside corner that you drafted him to be. Now, I think that Hargreaves is solid in a lot of other areas of playing cornerback, but I will now almost always worry about him every game that they play a speedster receiver, because here's why. The Bucs stick Brent Grimes on one side and they stick Vernon Hargreaves on the other. They don't really ever switch at all.
Right.
And the way that they work with that is that they switch their safeties a lot. You know, you could see Chris Conte on the right side or Chris Conte on the left side, and vice versa with, you know, Justin Evans, Keith Tandy, whoever it is. And we heard about that a lot this offseason of, you know, Mike Smith likes his safeties to be fluid. Well, I think the reason why he likes them to be fluid and that they could either play free or strong at any point is because he doesn't move his corners. Well, the problem with that is then you start to get into there are not definitive enough roles to be as aggressive as you want. And I'm writing this about the cover 3 later today. It's going to be out later this week. And it's about Justin Evans. And it was about his performance and what it can build off of moving forward. If you have Justin Evans, the athleticism that he has, now this is ideally, once he learns enough about the position and has the instincts that you would want him to have, you can play Justin Evans almost in like a center field cover 1 role, really just holding the deep end, where he can read a quarterback's eyes and he can help the side of the field that he needs to. Then that way you can also have a definitive strong safety who can play either like a robber zone role on post routes or routes across the middle or helping the run, ideally TJ Ward, obviously. And that's something that would allow your corners to be more aggressive in the way that they do things. So when you ask me, is that something that they can adjust to do? Yes, it is. I don't know if they're going to do that because Mike Smith has kind of talked about the themes that he likes to have on his defense. And sometimes it works when you get turnovers, and other times it just doesn't when you don't have pressure and you don't get turnovers. Like, those are the two things that are required for the style that Mike Smith is playing right now. And in order to get more aggressive, like we referenced earlier, you have to have definity somewhere because you have to simplify the roles. You can't, at the beginning of the snap, go, okay, the two outside corners are playing cover 3. That means that they have their sides of the field. They have to follow the guy deep if the safety's not helping. They have to help the guy underneath if there's a running back to the flat. So you don't know which way you're going to be guarding before the snap. You also have the two safeties where it's like, okay, you're playing quarters. You're basically standing right next to each other. Depending on how the wide receivers run, one of them is helping deep, one of them is helping short, but you don't know who it's going to be. You see what I'm saying? There's too much.
Everything's too reactionary.
There's way too much reactionary as opposed to the free safety going, I'm covering deep. That's what I'm doing. I'm watching the quarterback's eyes. I'm cutting off the side of the field that he's going to, and I'm going to warrant a no throw. You have the cornerbacks on the outside going, these are the two guys that I have. Where he goes, I'm going to go. And you have the strong safety going, this is my zone. If it's not here, I'm helping the run. So, like, until you have definitive roles, that much fluidity, and like you just said there, Ren, that much, like, reactionary secondary play is so difficult to be more aggressive on. So I don't know. I don't really know if they're going to do it. Well, I mean, we'll have to see. You know, they made the big adjustments after the bye week last week. Perhaps Mike Smith took a look at the tape and realized that they need to do the same, but I'm not sure. Those are my thoughts there on the defense.
So are you saying that the Mike Smith defense that, you know, basically carried the Buccaneers last year on this 5-game win streak, you know, and pretty much the second half of the whole entire year, let's face that, the last 8 games, and just held the New England Patriots to 19 points, who have been averaging over 30 for their first 4 games. Are you saying these are the one that was on Thursday night? It's a different defense than it was the second half of last year? And if it's not, give me a quick argument to why, you know, your stance is correct. And, you know, if you take those last 8 games last year and then, you know, sort of the New England game, like what's really to dislike, I guess, about the defense?
Well, the New England game, I will say that if they have Gronk in that game, and if Brady doesn't misfire on a couple of the passes that he misfired on, the Patriots are easily scoring mid-20s, high 20s, perhaps even hitting the 30. So it just kind of was like they came out on the right end of things on last Thursday. Certainly, like we said, giving up all the yards that they get, giving up over 400 yards, letting the Patriots control the clock as much as they wanted to. And then we got to remember that they had a lead for a good portion of that second half, so they're kind of just, they're not exactly attacking as hard as they need to. They're just getting into field goal range and kind of parking it as you're supposed to do. It almost came back to bite them because they couldn't score as many points as they wanted to. But I think last year they were playing with a lot more confidence. And I do think that Quan and Levante have something to do with that. So it is, on one hand, it is hard for me to fully judge what's going on because, let's face it, you take out two centerpieces of a defense, especially a zone defense that really focuses on their middle linebackers, and I can't be, it's just unfair for me to truly judge them that way. But I will say that I think the corners as a whole are struggling just as much as they did last year. They just were getting turnovers last year, and I think some of it is luck. Some of it's, yes, you got to put yourself in the right position, but you also have to hope that the opposing quarterback throws a ball he shouldn't throw. So I don't know. I do think that I think that hoping on turnovers as much as the Buccaneers seem to do right now is somewhat of a fault, because last year you get them, you make a run, but if you don't get them, and let's face it, I mean, Tampa doesn't have all pros at every spot in their secondary to make sure you're getting turnovers, then you're just going to have the opposing team's offense basically doing whatever they want, and it's up to them to score the amount of points that they need to. So I don't love it right now. I really don't.
And I mean, you got to also think about the idea. Again, I don't want to pin this all on Quan and Levante being out, but specifically with Quan Alexander, who is your play caller right there in the middle of the field. They went through this whole thing last year with communication through the first half of the year. They switched up how they communicated with each other. You've got a rookie who's wearing the mic helmet right now, right? Who, that's the guy who's kind of helping get people set and communicating. And Ren, I think you put it this way in the Giants game, that now has to play the chess match. Once the call comes in, Mike Smith's done everything he can do in that moment. It's now up to the guy who's in the middle of the field to play that chess match with Tom Brady or Eli Manning or whomever, the opposing quarterback is. And right now it's Kendall Beckwith who's doing a good job as a rookie, but he's not Quan Alexander.
Right.
Right. And so, maybe, it makes me wonder, and I don't know that any of us really know, Trevor, unless you have some sort of insight being there all the time. It makes me wonder if Mike Smith is calling his plays a little bit different because of something like that. And when Quan does get back in, maybe we open it up a little bit more. Maybe it frees Mike Smith to make some different calls.
Getting better players certainly will not hurt in making the defense more aggressive. Yes. I didn't mean that to come off as condescending as it might have, but that's just true.
Buy low, sell high.
When you're gonna get your better players back, it will allow you to do some more things. So you've got to kind of hope at this point, after watching the Bucs defense, that's gonna be what happens.
All right, let's switch over to the offense. I've been, seeing some tweets today. You've been breaking down, Jameis Winston, it looks like today, possibly, at least I'm hoping it's going to come out in your cover 3. It's coming out later this week that you talked about. I'm sure you've seen this narrative of Dirk Cutter play calling. Some people say he needs to get better. Some people are flat out saying that he needs to give it up altogether. I will be on the side that, I don't think that the tight ends, and you just got to throw Jay Howard there in for the last play, so maybe I'm talking to Cam Brate, help Jameis Winston out at all, during that Patriots game. A lot of those third downs, I thought the middle of the field would be open because the Patriots linebackers don't, pass coverage that well. They're great downhill, but pass coverage seems to be their weakness. And they kept, looking for Cam Brate sort of over the middle when they needed that third down reception. And, I felt that Cam let him down, a few times. 4 drops, 1 was a touchdown.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah.
His worst game as a Buccaneer, no question.
For sure. And, agreed. So, given that, and given that Jameis wasn't exactly accurate the first three quarters.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any give any credence to this Dirk Cutter play calling is antiquated, or he needs to get more imaginative, or he just needs to give it up altogether?
So I guess there's kind of like layers to each of those questions that you asked at the end there. I don't think that Cutter is a terrible play caller. Because I will say that there were some plays that he called even in the Patriots game where they were the right plays. They were the correct plays. Jameis just didn't hit the throws. I mean, that was kind of, or, it hit somebody and they dropped it, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of times we just forget about that because we want to be angry at the things that we can be angry about. But I will say on the flip side, it was good watching the Patriots on one side of the ball when I was looking at the all-22 of things, and then, flipping it over to the Bucs offense and getting to see what's different. Why such a simple offense and quick hit offense for the Patriots works so well when the Bucs have all these weapons and they couldn't get it done. So the play calling, they should, bottom line, they should have ran Doug Martin more in that game. So, in that sense, yes, there were play calling problems. There were a couple times in the game where they would, pass the ball on first down and be incomplete, run the ball on second down, and all of a sudden you're basically setting yourself up for third and long no matter what you do. Whether it's 3rd and 6, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 9, whatever. That's an awful sequence of plays to set you up for 3rd and 9 because the goal is on offense. Yes, you want to score, but in the smaller game of offense,
on the way to scoring.
If you can put yourself in as many third and short situations as you can, chances are you're going to get to wherever on the field you want to go most of the time. So in that sense, yes, I think the play calling was a little bit wonky, and I think it has been a little bit wonky. But the main gripe that I have with the style of the offense that they have right now is that the spacing of the routes is not great. For example, they had this one play that I'm thinking of. So if you can envision it, it's going to be really difficult on a podcast. Good job, Trev. If you can envision
this is an audio podcast, not a video podcast.
Right. Jameis in the shotgun. Deshaun is to your left in the slot. Okay. Humphreys is to your right in the slot. Okay?
Gotcha.
He hikes the ball. Deshaun is right. The linebackers drop back into kind of like a zone coverage. Okay? Deshaun is running basically a drag route, which is just him basically running over the middle, but it's at about 10 yards deep. So that might be called something different technically, but he's just running over the middle, 10 yards deep. He's going from left to right. Humphreys runs 5 yards up and then just does a curl back. So by the time Jackson gets to the part of the zone where you would hit him, Humphreys is already in the way, and Humphreys' defender is already there with him. So now, because of the way you designed the play, you can't hit Jackson or Humphreys. And I think that was on a 3rd and 5 play where both of those guys were the hot routes. You wanted something quick to get the first down, and because of the way the offense was designed and the spacing of it, you negated both of those throws before they could ever be thrown. Those are the things that I am noticing that need to be fixed more than other things. You could just say, just plain and simple, Jameis Winston has to be better with accuracy and ball placement. That's completely true. In terms of the play calling itself doesn't worry me nearly as much as the spacing of the way that they've schemed up plays right now, because those seem a little weird to me. And I don't know how easy of a fix that is once you're already into the regular season and this is your offense. That's my thoughts on that.
Right, because what you're now talking about, Trevor, is almost literally rewriting your playbook.
Yeah.
Because what it sounds to me like you're saying is that's just a bad play. You need to get rid of it and put in some new plays that are drawn up differently.
If that play right there, if Deshaun was going over the middle to the right about 10 yards deep, and let's say Humphreys is going, boom, over the middle to the left, like a mesh concept, just before him, either of those guys are open. And probably either of them get the first down. How hard is that? Why is that not the design anyways? You see the Patriots do that crap all the time. Mm-hmm. You see a lot of people do that all the time. And guess what? It's really hard to cover. Whether you're playing zone or man or whatever, when you got players who are as agile as Humphreys and Deshaun Jackson, I mean, there's not a linebacker that can keep up with them enough, especially not both of them. One of them's going to be open. So that's when I think to myself, why isn't that the play? What is this weird spacing that's going on? And let me say this late in the podcast. I've talked a bunch about X's and O's here on offense and defense. I've never played football before. So like, I don't know exactly what goes into all of these, like creating playbooks, things like that. I can just observe kind of why things aren't working the way that they are. And guess what? On that play right there, Winston didn't even throw the ball. He took a sack. You know why? Because the two guys acted like they were guarding each other, and Winston then didn't have anywhere to throw the ball because the other two routes that they were running, they were just decoy routes. So, I mean, that's what's weird to me. That's the weirdest part to me about when people talk about play calling. I'm talking about play design. That worries me more than play calling.
Could that have been a misread by Jackson, or it sounds in a way you described it more of Humphreys, where Jackson was reading man to man, and it sounds like Humphreys' route he was reading zone.
If that's the case, and there's like you're saying, like receiver options, like can go here or there.
Yeah, like pretty much Cutter came out and said on that final touchdown pass, the last play of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like how we're supposed to read the linebacker. Jameis read it right, threw the ball we're supposed to, and Howard missed the read.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know. I'm just hypothesizing.
I'm not a big fan of giving wide receiver options to a quarterback who isn't like 5 years. Like the only person that I would be okay on the offense with option routes being a part of his route tree is Mike Evans. Like not even Cam Brate. Like just because if you put wide receiver options in there, you are asking to mess up timing, and timing is so important, especially on stuff like that. So that's I guess my answer to that is if that was the case, then I still don't like it because I don't like those being in the playbook. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. So if we're gonna follow, sort of the narrative you just went with the bad play design, how does and I'm just sort of like continuing this conversation a little bit. That first catch when I was at back up a little bit, when I was at training camp, and I'm sitting there with, Derek old school, and you come up and you start talking about that play design in Jacksonville where O.J. Howard got his first catch where Brate was in the slot and he broke out and Jameis rolled out and O.J. Howard blocked down and then released and there's no linebacker to cover him.
Mm-hmm.
Talked about how great that play design was. So how does somebody go from having two receivers covered? This is an unfair question. Now I'm thinking about it. Tell me, Trevor, how does Dirk go from two receivers, being covered by one guy to, during the preseason where it seemed like I, and a bunch of other people were really excited about how these combinations and these plays and Dirk's creativity were going to, show up on Sundays.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's not to say, we like to point out things that don't work. But, I mean, I'll say, on the other side of things, to be fair, they ran an all right play action. Howard goes to the left, threw it to him, 58-yard touchdown. Nobody was guarding him. And that was when he scored his first touchdown in the regular season. And that was, that was all play calling. But, we criticize and we do things like that, but I mean, you do have to, in the back of your head, realize that they are calling 55 pass plays a game, like something, 40, 50, whatever, these are basically 40, 50 kind of different variations of stuff that needs to happen. So one play, you might look like a genius. The next one, you might look like what the heck were you doing? And I mean, that's why it's tough to be a play caller, and that's why it's tough to find really good play callers, because not only do you have to be able to do this every week, you have to be able to call different types of plays multiple times a year for this many times for 16 weeks, and even more if you get into the playoffs. And the more tape that teams have on you, the more creative that you have to get. So that's why like you just said, there are instances where the play calling has sometimes been brilliant, but I'm just kind of pointing out the things that I am before when we talked about Winston and making things easier for him, because they're not always as easy as they could be. And that is worth noting in that sense. I just think that you have to – I think that the Bucs offense is trying to outthink themselves. I think that they are trying to stretch the ball too far, and I think that they're getting too vertical. They have too talented of players to not be able to also keep things simple at the same time, allow Winston to hit, easier passes to get yards. And I, the whole, build his confidence up, that really bothers me because you're an NFL starting quarterback and a franchise quarterback. I don't need to baby you in the first and second quarter. We went through that, and this is now a tangent that I've gone off of, but we went through that last year, listening to everybody say you gotta run the ball heavy and you gotta give Jameis some easy passes to get his feet. Shut up! Come on, he's got to be past that at this point. You can't baby him that much and also on the flip side go, he broke all of these records for the Bucs and all these things and blah, blah, blah. Because you know what? People really did not like the fact that I pointed out that Jameis had 225 of his 334 passing yards in the fourth quarter, and it basically it shouldn't have mattered the way that it did. That was the most Blake Bortles game I've seen Jameis Winston do.
Wow.
I remember you said that on the pod, and what I thought to myself immediately was, I'm glad people didn't like it because I didn't like it either. But when Blake Bortles was doing that 2 years ago, 35 touchdowns or something, and throwing for 330, he was down multiple touchdowns.
Yes.
Jameis did it where the game was still, still had a chance to win. It wasn't in doubt. It wasn't it's halfway through the third quarter, we're down by 17 points. Let's just spread it out and start gunning it down the field while the defense playing prevent. So that's why I didn't like it. But your analogy, yes, it does hold some water with me.
The analogy was more Jameis had not done enough in the first three quarters to win that game. Whether you look at whatever he did in the fourth quarter, that is fine. You have to play all four quarters, and Jameis played one quarter last week. So that's why I compared it to Blake Bortles, not necessarily the fact that he threw 4 picks in those first 4 quarters, because you were right. He did not. I will say this. He did not blow the game for them in the first 3 quarters, but he didn't win it for them. And he's the reason why they were down. So there. That's my take.
Well, Trevor, on the back of that, I want to say thank you so much for joining us tonight and being a part of this conversation. Why don't you go ahead and tell people? Yeah, why don't you go ahead and tell people out there where, if they have anything they'd like to talk to you about, they can get a hold of you on the internet and maybe where they can find some of your work out there.
Yeah, if you want to get super angry about what I just said, my address is. I'm just kidding. Yeah, man.
You can find him at One Buck Place Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays.
Yeah, give him the Gerald McCoy. I'm at One Buck Place. You can come by anytime. My Twitter handle is at Tampa Bay Trey, TRE. I have all kinds of opinions and X's and O things that I do. But hey, honestly though, anybody who's listening, just get in on the conversation, man. I'm not a prideful person about the opinions that I have. I love talking different viewpoints of the game. Like I said, I never played, so it's an interesting thing that I have to hear from other people. So give me a follow, interact with me, comment with me. I'll always, do my best to comment back and engage with you because football is fun, man. We're all just here watching the game and trying to get these takes off. So that's what I'm doing. That's what I love doing on Twitter. So if you find me there, I will gladly listen to and react to anything you got about the Buccaneers.
Trevor, I was going to say, just real quick, did you happen to get a phone call from anybody about the open kicker spot this last week?
Oh, yeah. Good point.
I wish. Let me tell you, if I did, I wouldn't be on this podcast right now because I'd be signing a $465,000 contract and would basically be disowning everyone I've known before that point in my life because I'd be filthy rich.
We would now be the little people in your life.
Cool. Good to know.
Pat Murray will do a much better job than I would have. So we hope, I guess.
All right. We're eating into your time, I know, but 2 things real quick. Were you in the locker room today? And did you hear Pat Murray's were you there for his, I guess, quote unquote press conference?
No, I wasn't, unfortunately. Okay. I was doing cover 3 work. Why?
Okay.
What were you looking to know?
No, I wasn't. I was just going to comment, he's sort of like a strange cat, man.
Is he?
Oh yeah, go. There's like a 7-8 minute interview on Buccaneers.com.
Good.
Go look at that. Yeah, he's like Kevin Butler back in Chicago. Like he's got his own way of doing things. He's weird. But before you go, what I wanted to say was that we were butting heads a little bit there, but I really liked your take about how you thought the offense is too hard for its own good, sort of outthinking itself, and almost totally ignoring. I know I'm switching up your words, but totally ignoring the short passing game. And they have the players to do that, and they can make the offense easier and simpler on Wilson. Sort of move the ball down the field. I think that's spot on, and I just wanted to say that.
No, I totally agree. No, I'm with you there, and I'm glad you see it that way. Hopefully, they see it that way too, because I mean, we all just want to, whether it's the Bucs or whatever team you're watching, something you want to see football at its finest. And when you assemble an offense like the Bucs have assembled, especially with Doug Martin, hopefully getting him back in the mix the way that they really can, you can see a really fun offense, and not just for Bucs fans, but fans across the United States get to watch some good football. So you hope that they realize that. You hope that they figure out how to use the pieces that they've acquired to the best of their abilities, because, man, it can be a lot of fun. It could probably be, we've said before, on paper, this is probably the best offense this franchise has ever had. So you're just hoping it hits its ceiling and you get to see some of it.
Now they just got to execute.
Yep.
All right, Trevor, well, man, thank you so much. I know we're a little bit over time here, but, man, I really, really appreciate your time coming on the show tonight.
No, guys, thanks for having me. I always enjoy it. I really do.
All right, thanks so much, Trevor. All right, well, just as a reminder, if you want to get in touch with us about anything that we just talked about, especially here with Trevor, you can do that. Shoot us an email to thepewtercast@gmail.com or find us on any of the social media platforms at thepewtercast. Coming up next, we're going to be talking about your questions, your comments, the emails you've sent to us throughout the course of the week, talking about all the craziness that's been happening, especially in this extended time of this mini bye week. All that's coming up here right on the other side of this break. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Right now, for you, the Pewtercast listeners, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to check out their service. This is a great way to check out Jason Buick's book all about the history of our beloved Buccaneers, the good and the bad. The Yucks tells the story of how Tampa was awarded an NFL expansion team in 1974, and the trials and tribulations, and eventually the victories that marked those early years. It's a Hollywood-type story that you don't want to miss. To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/thepewtercast. Again, that's audibletrial.com/thepewtercast for your free audiobook. And we're back. This is episode 47 of the Pewtercast, and it's time for your emails, your questions, your comments, and your reviews. This week, Ren, we're taking a look at our iTunes reviews, and I noticed we don't have any new reviews, but we do have 3 more new ratings. So I want to say thanks to everybody for that. They're all 5-star ratings, which is very cool. Facebook is, with the iOS 11 update, they've separated the idea of the rating and the review. So it's much easier to just click a button and leave a rating without actually leaving a review, where the two were kind of used to be connected. But, hey, everybody who wants to leave us a rating, I appreciate it. It certainly helps other people when they come across us to know that you like our content and that other people like what we have here. So, encourages them to click on us. But I would ask of everybody out there, because it also helps people to just find us, please feel free to also leave a review, specifically on iTunes. Just helps other people find us as they're looking for Buccaneers content. And we would love to read your review right here on air.
Yeah, especially if it's 5.
There you go. Especially if it's 5.
1, I'll listen to a 1, 2. A 4, nah, I'll listen to them all. I'm just kidding. I think you said Facebook at the beginning, and then the second time you said iTunes.
Oh, did I? Yeah. Thanks for clarifying that. iTunes.
Yeah, it's iTunes. Yeah, I've noticed that. that it's a lot easier to give like 5 stars, and then you don't necessarily have to leave a review.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said before,
it doesn't really prompt you to
so
leave
I understand
a review.
why it's going that way, but
mm-hmm.
yeah. So, but yeah, hey, 5 stars, 5 stars.
Yeah.
Some people can't even get them.
There you go. We're very, very appreciative of either, but I would love to ask for those reviews. Let's switch over to Facebook, Ren, since you just talked about that. We have a question that came in to us from our friend Nick. He says, what are each of your thoughts on the Bucs' recent kicking situation and having Pat Murray back? Now, Ren, we've not actually had really a chance to talk about this since the news came out that the Bucs have re-signed Patrick Murray.
Right.
So why don't we dive into this? Your thoughts on the recent kicking situation and Pat Murray being back?
Yeah. When we finished up the interview with Trevor, I was sort of talking to him off air about no, it was on air, wasn't it? About
trying to keep it all straight.
He's just sort of a different cat, and he is. I encourage everybody to sort of go look at this interview he has on Buccaneers.com. I was listening to Ira's podcast, and Steve Isbitz, one of the Joes, was saying that he's one of the he say cockiest or
I heard that too,
or something. Yeah, so it was like of any NFL player. I think it's going to work out because, and this is, there's obviously no science behind this. It's just strictly opinion. It seems those kickers that are just like those weird oddballs are the ones that are the mentally strong ones, Like, they're sort of apathetic to, just about everything. But when the lights come on, it's time to kick. He kicks and he makes like, I made it. But if he misses, like, I missed. All right. So I for some reason I just feel it's going to work out. He had a great percentage from over 50. I think he was 5 of 6 when he was with us. Made 20 out of 24, which is like around 81%. So I like it. I think it's going to work out for us.
Yeah, I was listening to the Greg Allman podcast, the Cannon Fodder podcast, which that podcast has it's a niche that Greg Allman has carved out for himself of kind of a just the facts type deal. So very interesting. But he was talking about Patrick Murray, and I don't quite recall if he said that this was just for the team. I think he might have said that this was for the entire league. Patrick Murray is actually the shortest guy, I think, in the league. The shortest player in the league. Might be the shortest kicker in the league. Might be the shortest person on the Bucs roster. I'm not sure exactly, but I just
shorter than Jacquizz Rodgers.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, like that was because he specifically mentioned like he's right there with Jacquizz Rodgers, but he is the shortest person on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers roster. It might actually be the whole league. Somebody go listen to that one and find out. Email us. Let us know. But,
5'7".
And Jacquizz is?
Jacquizz Rodgers is 5'7".
There you go. So he's at least equal. At least equal.
Yeah. So he is a short dude. I never realized that.
Might be the shortest kicker in the league. That might have been it specifically. He's the shortest kicker in the league, and equals Jacquizz Rodgers as a tie for the shortest person on the Buccaneers roster. That actually might be it right there for what Greg had said. But you guys go check out his podcast. Comes out daily. As far as the kicking situation, I mean, I don't know, Ren. I think you said it best. My God, why are we still talking about this situation? Let's just be done talking about the freaking kicking situation. I mean, what happened with Nick Folk? I don't know. I don't know. Having Pat Murray back, it's fine if he makes his kicks. Here's my concern with Pat Murray. He's been cut twice now, both times due to injury. Is he an injury-prone guy, or are these just two random events that happened to him and he's now perfectly healthy and he's going to be fine?
Well, if you listen to his interview, he says that his leg is stronger than ever and he's ready to try it out.
Yeah.
the injuries happened for a reason, and he's back in the Buccaneers locker room for a reason. And I think I saw a tweet from Rick Stroud about how he talks to a medium, sort of like I guess that's like a fortune teller.
Yeah, like somebody who is a go-between between ghosts and the real world or something.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's a difference between like a fortune teller and a medium, and sort of like the difference between like a psychiatrist and psychologist, but they're all sort of in the same field type of deal. If you call it a field, not the psychiatrist thing, but the fortune teller field. But and Rick Stroud sort of said that like he's helped him work through a lot of things, and so that sort of falls into that he's a strange cat. He's just a different type of dude. So yeah, once again, I encourage everybody.
Okay, so that right there, what you have just, I think I might have just cracked the whole case on this whole Buccaneers kicker thing.
Oh, let's hear it.
Gosh, and I may be putting a curse on myself for saying this. All right, here's the deal. Pat Murray is into voodoo. Ever since he lost his Buccaneers job, he's had a little voodoo doll of whoever the current kicker is.
Oh, I see. It's the curse of Pat Murray.
It literally the curse of Pat Murray with a voodoo doll and a pin, just pricking somebody's plant leg or something. I don't. Maybe that's actually what's been happening with the kicker situation, and he's been doing that until he got back on the Buccaneers roster. Because where did he go play? He went to play in Chicago and then in Cleveland.
No, he went to Cleveland and won the job and got injured again.
Right.
And then he was with the Saints, I guess, this preseason.
Yeah.
And I guess he didn't win the job.
Yeah. See, this is all I'm saying. Tampa is a way better city to live in than any of those. Just throwing that out there. He wanted to be back in Tampa the whole time. I think that is probably the simplest, easiest explanation of what's been going on with their kicking situation over the last couple of years. But it's good to have Pat Murray back. And here's the deal. If he makes his kicks, I'm cool.
I'm with seven. Hashtag I'm with seven.
Hashtag I'm with make the damn kick. So I think I need to kill that hashtag just because the last two people who've had it attached to them have flamed out gloriously. So
you don't want to mess up his voodoo.
Yeah, I don't his feng shui or whatever it is. So with that, Ren, we actually had this. This was about our poll this week. So why don't we go ahead and take a look at this week's poll?
It's real bad. Okay, I don't like those numbers at all.
Just one poll. Those things aren't scientific.
Yes, they are. All this is science. This is math.
All right. Well, this week we all know that the Buccaneers brought in like 6 different kickers. I think it was 5 actually, and then the 6th one was just in for a physical. And so we asked which kicker, not Pat Murray, did you maybe want to see the Buccaneers sign? And Twitter only gives us 4 choices. So the 4 that we threw out there were Mike Nugent, Andrew Franks, Cairo Santos, and Josh Lambo. Of course, anybody can always tweet back in if they wanted to choose one of the other people. But, Ren, I'll throw this to you before we reveal the big winner. What did you think about this, this question and who, not necessarily about the question, just who did you want to see if it wasn't going to be Pat Murray?
Yeah, this is like, there's no logic to be able to predict what this outcome would be. Usually our questions, you can sort of talk your way through it. Like, I think it's going to be this, but it might be this, or it's definitely going to be this.
Mm-hmm.
And it even goes to the one I picked. I picked Lambo because I liked his last name. I was sort of in the realm like where you are, where you just said, I don't care, just make your kicks. And that's pretty much where I am with, of these 5 guys that came in, 4 of them tried out, because I guess Santos didn't try out. He just came in for a physical. I really don't care. Just, whoever kicks the best, which is a little unfair because, what do they get, like 10 kicks apiece? What if one guy made all 10 and, one guy made 9 out of 10, but that was like the best day that the guy that made all 10 ever had? Mm-hmm. It's just, I don't know. I wasn't there, so I don't know how everything worked out. I'm pleased it's Murray, mostly because it's just sort of a comfort level. Mm-hmm. I knew he was good for us at one point. But as far as the poll goes, I voted for Lambo because I liked his last name.
Well, there you go. I actually kind of was liking somebody who wasn't even in the poll. Now, of the poll, personally, I was a big fan of the idea of Cairo Santos just because he has a successful history currently with the NFL. But understanding that if you did that, that probably meant we were hanging on to Nick Folk for quite a while, or at least for a couple more weeks until Santos got healthy. So who knows what happened out of that particular physical, if that was even something that the Bucs were remotely considering. Let's take a look and see a couple other people. Chris actually just said Pat Murray. Also, kind of went again. He just said, no, it's just Pat Murray. Chef Aaron said Roberto Aguayo. And then he says, LMAO, just kidding. Which made me chuckle just a little bit. Nick Citro says Martin Gramatica. Martin. Although, I wonder with a kicker, like, we hear about people getting old in the NFL. You just can't play the same way. Like, could you be like 55 years old and still just kicking a ball and be kicking it just as good as you were when you were 25? I don't know. Is that even a thing?
I don't know. With that, you gotta sort of, I guess, put in Nolan Ryan's philosophy as far as pitching. Now today in Major League Baseball, it's like, oh, the arms need rest, and Nolan Ryan, pitched until he was like 45, 47, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he threw every day,
right.
And he threw hard every day. And that was his thing. It was like, well, if you do it every day, then the strength's never going to go away. And he kind of proved it.
Right.
Vinatieri just kicked the game winner for the Colts, I think, didn't he? Yeah. And he's 44. So, Morton Anderson just made the Hall of Fame. He kicked it, was 42.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually it's going to go away, but, it's sort of like I don't know. Yeah. What was your question?
No, I was just asking, how old Martin, I don't know how old Martin is right now, but is it possible he could come out of retirement and don a uniform and actually do okay? I
think, 35 and in probably, but
mm-hmm.
Once you quit, now I remember what I was going with. Once you sort of quit and get out of it, especially for a couple of years, and then you get that age, I just don't think the leg can hold up to getting back into making 45, 48 yarders consistently. I just think the leg will break down, unless he decided to go out and kick every single day and keep his strength up. Once you get that old, I don't think you can return to the strength that it was, just because as you're ramping up and starting to put, all the strain on the ligaments in the hip joint and, what have you, it's just not used to it, and it doesn't bounce back like when you were 25.
You don't want anyone to break a hip from kicking a field goal is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's just going to break. It's kind of like Darren Sproles this year. He blew something out, his ACL or his Achilles or something, and they're like, well, he's done, because he's like 34, I think. It's just like, well, that's going to take a year, and do you really want to get back into it? And who's going to want to, sign to somebody who, a 35-year-old who's coming off an ACL or Achilles or whatever? It's just, you just get to a point where it's just not going to happen. It's not in the cards for you. So I'm going to go with no. As 55-year-old Gramatica, I don't know how old he is, but can come on and retire. I would go no. I would lose my crap if they did. Like if they came out and said we're bringing back Martini Gramatica, I would not like that decision. I don't care which way you spun it to make it sound good. I'd be like, no, you're wrong. This is dumb. No.
Well, with all that talk about Martine, I got to tell you a name that actually I didn't even put on the poll that I was kind of a fan of. Not that I have any visual confirmation that it's any good. It's just it makes a lot of sense to me. Is that what's his name? Nick Kloss. I think is his name.
I saw that bounce around Twitter too.
Yeah,
I didn't know who he was.
He's an old USF kicker that apparently he had a couple workouts with the Buccaneers and actually around the league. Never signed a contract. So, for whatever people never actually, the NFL never really had that much interest in him. But he had mentioned, hey, I live like 3 minutes down the road. And by the way, playing at USF, I used to kick kicks inside Raymond James on those same uprights. And apparently he did really, really well. Like Like he was in the running for whatever award they give to kickers in college. Like he was the second runner up.
Won that.
Yeah, well, Roberto Aguayo won that. Actually, wound up beating out Klaus, but we saw how that one turned out. So, but I was kind of a fan of just go with somebody new, go with somebody who's proven themselves in Raymond James, somebody who. But none of these other people that we've really seen. I kind of liked that idea, but out of the picks, I liked the idea of Santos. And with that, 85% of the vote, Ren.
Yikes.
This may be the largest margin that we've ever had on a poll. 85% went with Cairo Santos, which tells me that 85% of you listeners out there were okay.
3 people are.
Right. And you were okay with the idea of keeping Nick Folk around for a couple of weeks until Cairo got better. Josh Lambo got 5%, 4% went to Andrew Frakes, and Mike Nugent came in, a former Buccaneer, also like Pat Murray, came in at 6%. I want to say thanks to everybody who,
Where did Lambo? What place Lambo come in?
He was third. He was third by 1%. 1% separated the bottom 3 from each other.
Lost by a nose.
Yeah. So I want to say thanks to everybody who participated in the poll. It's kind of always fun getting to see what you guys out there are thinking and getting to interact with you on that level. Have just a couple of emails to get through tonight, Ren, from our listeners. First one comes from Brian, who emailed us last week talking about the Instant Cast. Said that our Instant Cast show from last week was one of the best ones we've ever done, or maybe was the best one. And I think we had responded to him, and he just said, hey, we were both equally entertaining and informative. He loves the podcast. Keep up the good work. Go Bucs. So just responding, I think, to something that we said to him, which is very cool.
Oh, I probably said something, snarky, like, I was the entertaining one, something like that. So he's saying, no, you're entertaining too, Brent.
I appreciate that. I like being entertaining, professionally. Next email, moving on, comes from Christian. Christian says, breaks this up. He says, offense. He says the offensive line played very well. He felt like Winston had a lot of time to throw. He was just off the mark. Where was Mike Evans? Let me stop there, Ren. Let's talk about Mike Evans. That's a name we haven't really talked about, particularly with this last game.
Yeah.
Rather invisible. Didn't really do a whole lot.
No, I don't know. I don't know if he says invisible. He just wasn't Mike Evans. Obviously, the game plan was not hinging on Mike Evans. They're planning to move the ball up and down the field.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, was Mike Evans sort of what seemed to be an afterthought. He had like 5 catches for like 57 yards or 60 yards, something like that. I mean, he caught the first play, they had the ball, he caught like a first down. And then the next time they had the ball, they threw to him and he caught a first down. And then, I guess he only got 3 throughout the game. Yeah. Like I said, I don't know. Obviously there was something that the Buccaneers liked better, going to the other receivers, Sean Jackson being one and Cam Brake being 2. And once again, if Cam Brake would have caught the ball, it could have been a different game.
It's possible that the Patriots guys listened to the podcast that I did with the Pewter Report guys a couple of weeks back, where, in talking about these different weapons for Winston that we have, kind of saying, hey, pick your poison. Who are you going to pick? You just can't cover everybody. So which one are you going to choose? And I said, if it's me, the poison I'm choosing is Deshaun Jackson every single time. I'm going to double Mike Evans. I'm going to shut him down. I'm going to shut down the tight ends. I'm going to shut down Adam Humphries. And just knowing that because that chemistry, quote unquote, isn't there yet between Jameis and Deshaun, if I have to pick something, that's the one I'm going to gamble on. And we saw it. Deshaun, I think, got the most targets anyway out of the game this last week. And that even led us to a conversation saying, was Jameis trying to force the ball to Deshaun? Well, maybe it's just Deshaun was the one who was most open. He was the one who had the fewest people. And I don't know. I didn't go back and look and see exactly what was going on with Mike Evans the entire time. It's just a thought, maybe a what if for that.
No, that's a good one. I mean, when you talk about a Bill Belichick defense, you hear it over and over again. He's going to take away what you do best and make you beat you another way. And what the Bucs do best is, at least through the passing game, is
Mike Evans.
So Mike Evans. So
and Cam Brate, by the way. Mike Evans and Cam Brate, those are our two best, and those guys did not have a shining game like they normally do.
I don't think Mike had a bad game. He just didn't have
It just wasn't a shining game. Yeah. So
I mean, if you're playing a PPR league, you got you like 11 points.
There you go. All right, moving on. He says, Doug is back and better than ever. Said I would have liked to have seen him with at least 20 carries when he finished with only 13 for 74 yards. And he goes on to say, third down conversions need to be converted, plain and simple. I agree with that. Here's the thing about the Doug Martin thing. And I've thought about this because Doug's doing great, feed him the ball. Doug's doing great, feed him the ball. The other side of that argument is, this is Doug's first game back, full contact in over a month.
Right.
Like preseason, and we heard it from Cutter, preseason is they go out in that first game and they get like a quarter. The second game they get, 2 quarters. The third game they get a bit longer than that. And then they get that week off to rest, and then they go full contact. So they're building up their bodies to be able to play full contact for an entire game. Doug Martin didn't have that. He went through the preseason and got what he needed in preseason, and then he's just sitting. He's just gone. Do the Bucs need to go out and burn Doug Martin his first game back? And maybe that's a reason. I don't know if that's what it is, but that makes sense to me as far as if people are asking why didn't we keep going back to Doug when Doug was working so well, of probably just not trying to go to him so much, considering the fact it was his first game back, knowing what that does to your body on Monday morning, or in this case Friday morning or Saturday.
Well, he gets like 10 days to recover, so I'm not sure if that, I follow your logic, I'm not sure if that was typical. What was it? I heard, and it's been reported that Cutter just thought Martin was gassed. And if you look at the game, first half he was great. They gave him the ball in the third quarter like 5 or 6 times. Didn't do nearly as good. Still had some okay runs, but, the stop at the line of scrimmage and not hitting the hole as hard was prevalent. And then he gave him the ball one time in the fourth, which was the 3rd and 2. And this was not his fault at all because the whole entire Patriots defensive line ended up 3 yards on our side of the line of scrimmage, and he actually squirted through, but he was being tackled as he squirted through, and he reached out and got the ball back to the line of scrimmage. Problem is, he needed 2 yards. And then by that time, the Patriots got the ball, went down, kicked the field goal, and now we're in okay, we're down 2 scores. We need to, and that's, it was 3rd and 2, we didn't make it, and that's when Nick Folk missed the 48-yarder. And it's like, okay, the Patriots gets the ball, go down, kick the field goal, and it's like, okay.
Time to start throwing the ball.
Yeah, we got to start throwing the ball. And we started deep in our end zone. And I thought Jaquiz Rogers was in there because it's been a while since, Doug Martin was in on sort of the blitz pickup. They knew we were going to run the ball. They knew they wanted max protection to prevent the safety. But, of course, the first play, not Deshaun Jackson, Jaquiz doesn't pick up the blitzing linebacker, and Jameis just has to throw it, 20 yards out of bounds, just prevent the safety. A couple plays after that, that's when he hit Deshaun Jackson for that 41-yarder, where he just, ran through, used his speed, just ran through that zone defense. So that's why I thought Doug Martin wasn't in there, down, by the goal line when the Bucs were trying to get out of there, was just, to extra protection for the blitz pickup, because Jaquiz Rogers has been doing it for three weeks. But that's neither here nor there. But like I said, I also heard he was gassed. I thought everyone looking back on it, you're like, you need to give him the ball more. Well, you need to give him the ball more early, when things were rolling. And I thought he gave him the ball once he got in there, which was,
the second series.
A little too late. He had a great first drive, and then he didn't play the next drive. And then he came back and had a good, drive after that. Then it was halftime, had an okay third quarter, not terrible, but, probably, a B- third quarter. And the fourth quarter only got 1 carry. So I see where it's like you need to run Doug the ball more. My question is where? When? In the fourth quarter. Okay, when in the fourth quarter? Back on the goal line? It's because they sort of abandoned the run altogether in the fourth quarter to begin with. And they had 225 yards of offense. How are you going to argue that not running, You have 225 yards of offense. You need to run the ball more in the fourth quarter. Why? We put up most of our points and all of our 2/3 of our yards in the fourth quarter. So obviously the offense was working in the fourth quarter. So I get it, but I think it's more of a final number anomaly than actually what happened in the game.
I'm not going to answer your question of when to give him more carries, but just where Christian here says he wants to see him with at least 20 carries, I'm just going to reference back a couple of years ago now at this point. Chris Fisher of the Bucs Brief podcast, on his podcast from a couple years ago, was doing kind of some number crunching and basically came out with the numbers that anytime Doug Martin had 20 or more carries, the Bucs won the game. And it was almost like a 1-for-1, like 100% ratio. If Doug got more than 20 carries, we won the game. If he got under 20 carries, we maybe won, maybe lost, or something of that nature. So, of course, that was in a time when the Bucs weren't exactly winning a ton of games each season. But that was a statistic he pulled out. So, I don't know where to give him more touches in this particular game, but the idea that Doug would get the ball at least 20 times is that's a solid number that has some historical data to back it up. Let's move on. Defense, he says he thinks the defense played extremely well with Justin Evans' first career start and Beckwith continuing to impress. Ren, you and I have talked at length about defense, kind of going, was it as good as we feel like it is? Maybe kind of not.
Right.
He goes on to say the defense will get better when Quan and David return. I'll reference what Trevor said earlier. You mean when the better players get on the field?
Buy low, sell high.
Fair enough.
That's how you want it to stuck.
Yes, they will. Fair enough. He said they gave the offense a chance to win the game. They certainly did. I mean, the defense, for whatever you could say, whatever might be iffy on the defense, at least with us, Ren, it did at least keep the offense, that's the other side of it, right? Well, they didn't run the score up on us. So he says on special teams, why not kick it deep instead of the onside kick? And I'm assuming he's talking about that very last, there towards the end. He said if the Bucs get the stop, they'd only take a field goal to win. Speaking of a field goal, well, enough said. So I'd say onside kick because that's just kind of what you're supposed to do in that situation. You'd rather get the ball back rather than trying to get a big stop. When the game's on the line, you want the ball in your hands, not the other person's hands.
Right. What the Bucs were doing was trying to take Tom Brady out of the equation. I mean, we all saw what happened to Dallas in the Dallas-Green Bay game. A minute 13 on the clock, Aaron Rodgers needs a touchdown to win the game. He drives him down the field, gets a touchdown. If they kick it deep, that's definitely Tom Brady's getting the ball. They have a 2-minute warning and 1 timeout, so basically all he does need is a first down and the game's over. 95 times out of 100, he's going to get that first down. So the onside kick is sort of taking that out of the equation. We're going to try an onside kick. If we get it, great. If we don't, they're still far enough back. If they don't get a first down, it's going to be like a 50-plus yard field goal. Now, of course, the Bucs jump offside, so not only do they recover the kick, they get that extra 5 yards. Without that extra 5 yards, that 48-yard field goal would have been a 53-yard field goal, and I don't know if Belichick kicks it or punts it and tries to pin us deep. And if he punts it and tries to pin us deep, that's only a couple more seconds off the clock, but I don't remember where we got the kick. We got the kickoff back at the 25. So maybe we're 20 yards back further, but now a field goal ties it? No, field goal wins it. A field goal would win it. Yeah, I don't remember how it went. A field goal would have tied it or won it.
Yeah,
a field goal would have won it because we lost by 5, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so their field goal put them up by 5. I'm sure there's people out there, idiots, blah.
Yeah.
So that's what they're doing with the onside kick. I get it, kicking deep, and you're like, well, if you kick it deep and you stop them, then you get the ball back and a field goal wins it.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't, if you kick the ball deep, you can't guarantee the stop. I mean, that
right.
was.
Well, I mean, but that's what we saw. That's what we saw all night from the defense. For as great, quote unquote, as the defense was doing, Tom Brady and the Patriots they were moving the ball down the field. I mean, at will, moving the ball down the field. So, that's again, I go back to, listen, if you're in a game-winning situation at the end, you want the ball in your hands, not the other team's hands, period. So, you're going to do what you can to give yourselves the ball back. But I get the idea. I get the concept of what he's trying to say. Something maybe I'd try at the end of the first half. Something maybe even in the third quarter. Maybe earlier in the fourth quarter. Not quite there at the end, though. I wouldn't want to do that if I'm the coach. So, but I'm not the coach. But thank you, Christian, for your email. I very much appreciate that. Yeah, it was great. Great email. I love getting in nice little succinct ones like that. Next email comes from Daniel, all the way over from Scotland in the UK.
Oh, well.
Mm-hmm. And that would be the United Kingdom, not the University of Kentucky, just for the record there.
The one that does have a football team. Hi-oh.
Oh. Hey, listen, University of Kentucky is 5-1. That's not why we're here to talk. Let's move on. Dan says, hello, guys. I'm not even going to try it in the Scottish accent. He says, hello, guys. Daniel from Scotland, the United Kingdom here. Great show and keep up the good work. Says he has one question for us. Is it particularly windy in these games when the kicks have been missed, or is it simply a psychological problem we have at the moment?
Oh, man. That's such a great question coming from somebody from Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you or any of I'm sure some of the listeners, but I don't know how many of the listeners have actually been to the coast of England or around the coast of Scotland, and you don't know windy until you've lived in those areas. I mean, the bushes are actually, the wind comes off the coast in a certain direction, and the bushes actually look like windswept at all times because as they're growing, the wind just blowing through them in one direction. They look like big, long alien heads.
So what you're saying is they are grown windswept.
Yes, they're grow. As they grow, they get windswept. And the bigger they are, the more so the trunk goes straight up,
mm-hmm.
And then as the bush starts to bloom around into like a circle, it just starts to go in one direction. Like I said, it looks like a side picture of the alien head, the classic alien as an aliens. Anyway, I just thought it's funny if someone from Scotland is it windy there? Because it's windy here. No, the answer is no. It is not Scottish gale off the links. No trees to stop the breeze coming off the coast wind.
I got to tell you, being in the stadium, and by the way, where we sit in the stadium is a very different kind of breeze than what's actually down on the field in the stadium. But even just looking at they have little flags that are on the end of the poles there on the end zone, and they're not moving. So it's not windy. It's not even close. You described the Scottish gale force winds. It's not even a slight summer breeze down there.
It's not even a breeze to make you feel better if you're sitting there in the heat.
Yeah. Nothing. Is it simply a psychological problem? Apparently, it's an injury problem. Or if we go with my theory from earlier, it's a voodoo problem.
It's a voodoo injury wind, but it's all of them. It's a wind problem. Yeah, it's psychological is what it is.
That'd be a good show title if we could go back and redo the show title, Ren. It's a voodoo problem.
No, it is not a good title. I mean, I've been nice about this. You said it's like the best, easiest reason. It's the dumbest reason, Brent. It's the dumbest reason.
But it's funny. Okay. But it was funny. Daniel goes on to say, he says he's pleased to say he will be in the States this month and he'll be at the game in Carolina. Can't wait. Daniel, when you're here, hit me up. I will be at that game as well. I would love to hook up with you, bro. He asked, any suggestions for tailgating? Ren, do we have anybody we can suggest or any tailgates we can suggest for our friend Daniel?
I mean, I know some small ones, but I guess he'd want to go to a big one, right?
Do you think we should tell him about the big one?
Yeah, it's something.
All right, let's tell them about the big one. Yeah, Dan, you can go over to whatthebuck.net and look at they run a big tailgate. It's the only Hall of Fame, I don't know what Derek calls it, the only Hall of Fame winning tailgate. It's an award-winning tailgate. They just had their 90th tailgate. Which is crazy. You figure that means
90 straight tailgates. 90
straight tailgates, yeah. So that's a big one. It's really close. It's within walking distance of the stadium, and it's kind of this. If you've been following this fan base united thing with stick carriers and Buckaholics and all these, whatever the different fan groups are, it really, as far as a tailgate goes, converging on this one spot with the What the Buck tailgate. So they have all their information over there. I'll follow them on Twitter at What the Buck or in Facebook. They put out they have like a little informational flyer that gives you all the information before each game. But make sure you check that out. But that's the one I would suggest. I do not suggest just walking up to any tailgate and asking for a burger. Not entirely sure how that would go over for you.
Yeah, What the Buck tailgate's the place to go. I mean, they start early, and it's $20, and it's all you can eat, all you can drink. Plus, there's they have a stage. All the money goes to a charity. So there's like a little concert near the end of the tailgate before they break down and go to the game. So that's the one to go. Whatthebuck.net.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we got one more email. Ren, you know who this one is from.
Yeah. I gotta start thinking of something funny. But yeah, it's from Doug.
This is from Aaron. He says, I'm going to be quick since I'm at work. He said, Doug looked amazing. Agree. We need to start doing the slant to D-jacks if the long bombs won't work. Mike Evans was surprisingly lost in the shuffle. Pat Murray is back. Let's see some actual field goals made. The defense looked pretty damn good with the backups that we had against the GOAT, referencing Tom Brady. So that is always a positive, and hopefully Quan and Levante David will be back this week. I got most of my thoughts on the Instant Cast to help me out for this short post. So sorry to be short. I've got work. I'll do better next week. Go Bucs.
Heard that. Yeah. That's something we haven't really discussed. We talked a little bit about, how Quan and Levante's out, but we haven't discussed how well the Buccaneers defense did with starting, two rookies.
Yeah.
Justin Evans played the whole game back there, and got the pick, obviously. I'm sure everyone's talked about that. But, yeah, I sort of forgot about how Justin Evans, was back there as well, trying to hold that secondary together. So, yeah, Aaron's right. Maybe I might bump up my defense grade up to a D. Did I give him a D minus? I don't remember what I gave him. I gave him a D plus. Maybe I'll bump up to a C minus. But anyway, yeah, he's always spot on with his emails. He's right about everything. Can't wait to see Patrick Murray. Doug look great. The defense, yes, with those Adarius Glanton and the two rookies, they did do a good job. Got a little bit of a pass rush, and yeah, that's it. He summed up well as always.
There you go. Yeah, I have nothing more to add to that. So, well, Ren, that is our last email. So that is going to do it for this segment, really, as well as this entire episode, which is very fun. Just as a final reminder to everyone out there, you can get in touch with us about anything we've talked about today at facebook.com/thepewtercast or on Twitter @thepewtercast. Or if you're a little more winded than just 140 characters, or 280 if you're one of the lucky few who have that one, you can shoot us an email to thepewtercast@gmail.com. Well, Ren, as we get out of here, where can the fine people find you on the internet and more of your work?
I always write 2 columns per week, plus a round table, which is sort of all the authors kind of chime in on one subject for the Peter Plank. You can also find some of my longer articles on whatthebuck.net. The Peter Plank has their own app, so you can download it onto your phone. A nice, clean app makes it real easy to read and follow on there. But to find me personally, if you want to talk to me, I'm at RenDax on Twitter. That's REN_DAXT. I'm always down to talk Bucs football.
And you can find me on Twitter personally at Brent Allen Live or at Facebook.com/ Brent Allen live. Oh, Ren, with that, I do want to just give one plug. Hey, listen, I know we skipped over a big chunk of what we normally would do as far as talking about the game. If you haven't listened to it yet, you guys want to go back and check out some more of our thoughts on the game, the Patriots versus Bucs. Go back and listen to the Instant Cast. It was a really great discussion that we got to have several days after the game was over. And I was listening back to it the other day, and I was thinking, wow, this was a really great discussion that we got to have. So if you haven't listened to it yet, go back and listen to the Instant Cast. That's going to do it for us, guys, for this week. Coming up next, we have the Arizona Cardinals. We'll be flying back out there. Got a little unfinished business left over from last year, actually. Right, it was towards the beginning of the season last year, wasn't it? Second game?
Yeah, it was.
Game 2. Yeah, so sort of a little later, not that much. But either way, guys, that's what we're going to be talking about next week. So that's going to do it for us until then. And guys, you guys know we finish out every show by saying, "Go Bucs." All right, well, this week we...
All right.
I'm hitting puberty.